Welcome to the Putnam County Library Lunch and Learn. Today we are joined by attorney Amber Vargas of the Legal Aid Society. She will be discussing domestic violence awareness. Take it away, Amber.
Thank you. So I do want to introduce the colleagues who can't join me today, Dana Looper. I am pictured here on the left of the screen with my managing attorney, Christine McMiniman, and then to the right is Dana Looper, former police officer who also normally presents on domestic violence awareness with me. She sadly could not join us today, but I have included her contact information on the final slide. Just a quick disclaimer, anything and everything I say in this presentation does not take the form of legal advice. Every case is different, and if you are seeking legal advice for your specific situation, please reach out to Legal Aid Society or private attorneys to get actual answers to your case's question. This is for information purposes only. Briefly, Legal Aid Society, who I'm a staff attorney for, we're a nonprofit. We don't charge our clients anything, and we are here to assist low-income individuals who can't afford their own private attorney with civil cases. So we don't represent anybody who is facing criminal charges, and we are also not the ones who prosecute criminal charges. That's handled through the district attorney's office. And we are specifically Middle Tennessee, and we cover 48 counties with our 8 offices, and I'm here in the Cookeville office, and we actually serve 10 counties here in the Cookeville office, and I am the one attorney dedicated to family law. So we can be reached out for any of the listed issues, and if we have the resources available, we can offer you advice and sometimes even legal representation in court, again, for your civil legal issues. And now I'm going to dive into some information about domestic violence. This is really my calling. This is what I joined Legal Aid Society for. While I was in college, I started interning with a safe house in East Tennessee. I was taking hotline calls from victims, both in current crisis who needed shelter and people who just needed to talk about what they went through, whether that was a few months ago, just the night before, or there's one client in particular who had been years away from her abuser but was haunted by nightmares, and so she would often call in the wee hours of the morning just to talk to somebody. That's one of the many resources that safe houses offer. They're not just shelter for victims fleeing from abuse, and you can call them even if you're not in shelter and don't want to be in shelter. You can call them anytime on their 24/7 line, and you can also use them to connect to other resources, and all of it's free. In East Tennessee, I was sometimes helping people from other states that were fleeing to Tennessee, and there are programs and grants that allow us to get bus vouchers or pump up gas for victims who are fleeing, regardless of where they're originally coming from and where they're going to. So I encourage everybody to reach out to any service that you can find, and I have included some local ones later in the presentation. One of the reasons I am so passionate about domestic violence is because it occurs everywhere, all the time. It affects so many of us. There's national statistics say that 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence or sexual assault in their lifetime, and 1 in 4 men will experience domestic violence or sexual assault in their lifetime. Often the victims who have grown up in a household where there's domestic violence to one of the parents or to them as a child, they either normalize that behavior and then reenact it later in life, or even if they get some assistance and know that it's not typical for your partner to hurt or scare you, they still seek out that familiar pattern because that's what they've come to know. So I think that it's beneficial to reach anybody of any age to look out for the signs of a abusive relationship that they might be in or that a loved one might be in. One of the images I have here is the power and control wheel. This was specifically adapted to be gender neutral because men can be abusers, women can be abusers, and women, men, and children can all be the victims of abuse. And it is routinely not about it's not about attraction, it's not about love, it's not about anything that a victim does or that a particular abuser sees in the victim. It is purely about the abuser's ability to keep power and control over that person. In a healthy relationship, there's a balance. You're equal, you're partners. In an unhealthy relationship, there is a chance that your partner will fly off the handle, and that might be figuratively with calling you names, putting you down, belittling you. It might be a tactic of knowing where you are at all times, and they claim it's jealousy or that they love you so much that's why they're acting that way. But somebody who truly loves you isn't going to blow up your phone because you didn't answer a text right away. They're not going to ask you to explain who you're dressing for if you dress nicely, whether or not you put on makeup to flirt with someone else. They're not going to prevent you from getting a job or accuse you of cheating every time you leave the house. Abusers can use children in lots of different ways. I had one male client whose wife insisted, I'm gonna get the kids. It doesn't matter what I've done to you, I'm the mother, the kids are gonna go with me. And for years he believed that, and he was terrified about finally standing up for himself and the abuse he was going through because he believed that. Thankfully he does have custody of his children now, and he is divorced from that abuser. But like I said, for many years, he really believed that threat. Also, there are often financial differences in abusers and victims, either because the victims aren't allowed to keep a job or their abusers call their work all the time until they lose their job, because you can't pick up the phone every 5 minutes without disrupting the rest of the workplace. For a silly example, if anybody's seen the TV show Schitt's Creek, the first time the son tries to get a job, the dad keeps on asking him how it's going, and by the third time he realizes, the son realizes that he's got to turn in his apron because he can't keep a job where he has to keep on asking questions about how his job is going in the first 5 or 10 minutes. And abusers can totally take advantage of that. And it's not always a threat of physical harm, though those happen too. Sometimes it really is just about keeping that person isolated and from anybody else. And they can use any means of manipulation to get you to that point. The law in Tennessee is limited in the sense that orders of protection in Tennessee are reactionary. something bad's already happened to you, and now you're asking for a court order to prevent something worse from happening to you. In Tennessee, the main orders of protection for individuals who are in a relationship or used to be in a relationship with someone who is abusing them, that requires physical harm, a threat of physical harm, or some other type of intimidation. They do also address financial abuse. That was a very late, very recent addition to the order of protection laws here in Tennessee, but they do not cover the name calling, the obsessive use of your phone or location. They don't address the emotional and psychological toll that can be taken on a person, because it's really focused on the outcome, the threat of harm or death, or the actual destruction of property, like punching a hole in the wall, flipping a table, smashing a phone, or physically putting your hands on someone. We'll talk some more about other ways you can get an order of protection in Tennessee, but none of them really cover this emotional, psychological abuse. I also am going to try once more to play a short video for y'all on consent. There is a myth here that I've heard from many of my clients, and I grew up in a town where I believed the myth that if you were in a relationship with somebody, especially if you married that person, that you couldn't say no to sex with them, because there's a myth that there's no such thing as spousal rape. That is not true. That is a incorrect myth. The law in Tennessee does recognize that you can say no to somebody you've had sex with before. You can say no to somebody you're dating. And you can say no to somebody you're married to. Nobody is entitled to your body, regardless of whether or not you put a ring on your finger. So I'll see if this will play for us. And if it will not, then I will try to cover the highlights. Essentially, the way to get to actual consent with somebody is to ask open-ended questions about how they feel. Don't assume or put words in their mouth. The difference between is this okay versus it's okay that I'm kissing you, right? Like the tone matters, the word use matters. If you just assume that's something you've had consent to do with a person before, that you have consent now, you're actually not taking into account anything that could have changed in their situation. So even if it feels like you're overdoing it, communication is key. Can I hug you? Can I do this? Can you do that? And having an open and honest conversation with your partner is better than leaving it in the gray area. And you might realize afterwards that that person agreed to things they weren't really comfortable with doing, or maybe you did. Maybe you agreed to things that you really didn't want to do because the communication wasn't clear. So I definitely recommend just really approaching that subject as frankly as possible with any potential partners, because you don't want to be on either side of that, either taking advantage of someone who for one reason or another didn't communicate their needs with you, or being the person who feels taken advantage of because you were not, you did not feel safe to say no. No is a complete sentence, and I think a lot of people forget that for one reason or another, and sometimes for past traumas we rush through and we don't think of all the ways in which we, meaning to or not, can be intimidating to another person. Does anybody have any questions about unhealthy relationships, power and control, or consent?
Wish I'd known this several years ago.
Amen.
Me too.
Amen. It is so helpful. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this, is just to bring awareness, because so many people don't know. And it's not talked about enough, not in any age group.
It's not talked about in polite company.
Right. Yeah, talking about consent shouldn't be summed up to like locker room talk, or it should be discussed openly, because it is a part of life, and the difference between consensual sexual relations and non-consensual ones are huge. I appreciate that comment, and I also feel like there's so much I wish I had known when I was younger too. I don't think I have a slide specific to this, so I will go ahead and discuss the next thing. Let's see, the same animation is coming up again, which made me think maybe the video would work. It did not. Okay, I'll leave this up here while I talk about this a little bit. This is not specific to law, but to research on human psychology. Many people have heard of fight or flight, and for years that was all that was discussed. By the time I went to college, 11, 12, 14 years ago is when I started college, but when I finally went to college, it was the first time that I heard of the freeze response. And now research shows that there's also another response, fawning. So just to make sure we're all up to speed, I'm talking about survival instincts. These are naturally occurring instances in which your body decides what's best for you and to survive a situation. There is no conscious thought. I've heard so many people that say, well, if I was in that situation, I'd punch him in the nose. If I was in that situation, I would leave her immediately. I hope you never figure out what you would do in that situation, because you really don't know what you'll do until you're in it. With fight, it can be physically fighting back. It can be defending yourself. It can look like arguing or yelling. Fight can look like taking advantage of these resources and calling 911 and speaking out. Flight can look like physically running away. It can also look like mentally running away, avoiding the conflict, avoiding the situation, just going out of your way to keep the peace. Freeze can, again, look like the physical, frozen solid and ice, freeze tag. It can also look like dissociating, and you're not really present. You're not really sure what your body's doing in the moment or what's being done to your body, and your mind's left to protect you. It could be an out-of-body experience. It could be that you have no recollection of what you've been through. And fawning, I think one of the reasons research didn't cover fawning for the longest time is because there's so many different types of trauma. You wouldn't try to please a car that you're in a car accident with. You wouldn't try to offer a bear a deal. You're not going to try to please or appease a bear that's coming at you in the woods. But when the person that you love, either a parent, a sibling, a partner, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend or girlfriend, when they're the ones who keep on trying to harm you, you're more likely to want to please them. I myself am a survivor, and I found myself doing a lot of the fawning. I was constantly trying to make my pain less by offering anything and everything that I thought would keep my abuser happy and happier for longer. And also, I have a combination with freeze, and there are some things that my brain just does not think I'm ready to deal with yet, and that I don't remember clearly. But the reason I'm sharing that is because I want people to know that there is no shame in whatever your body did. If you survived it, your body did its job, and there's nothing shameful about that. You were not in control of how you got out of that situation, but I'm glad that you got out of that situation. And as much as it can be frustrating to talk to people who don't get it, that my go-to is always, I hope you never find out what you would actually do in that situation, because I don't wish harm on anybody, and I don't wish trauma on anybody. I'll kind of slip into this slide. I am an attorney who only works with victims of domestic violence. So I either help get divorces if you're married to an abuser who has harmed you or has harmed a child of the marriage, or I help get orders of protection. Now, again, I will address the other ways you can get an order of protection, but briefly, it includes stalking and sexual assault, and you don't have to have a relationship with that person. You can ask for a protective order regardless of if you ever knew them before the stalking or sexual assault occurred. But because I am constantly working with people who are in immense trauma, and I'm working with them talking over and repeating the traumas and practicing for how they have to tell a judge about their trauma, I think it's just very important to keep a few things in mind. So I always try to acknowledge the emotions of the people talking to me. There's something to be said for taking a moment, not necessarily doing it after every single sentence, but after you've been told the story, take it in. That sounds terrifying. That sounds exhausting. I would also be overwhelmed with everything that's happened. Just kind of take at least a moment or two to address what has been shared with you. And there's no right way to react to trauma. Some of my clients are crying, some of them are angry. And frankly, I get it. So just acknowledging whatever emotions they're expressing, or lack of emotions. They might be numb to it all. They might be able to tell you everything in a monotone voice. And that's okay too. And sometimes I literally tell clients, often it's younger ones that are more inclined to comment on themselves, like, oh, is it bad that I don't care? Is it bad that I'm not crying? And I'm just like, no, there is no right or wrong. It is your story and how you react to it. Listen to them, listen to their stories, and keep in mind that trauma rewires your brain and memories are scattered. Maybe they disassociated, maybe they have told 8 people what has happened to them, and they don't remember if they told you in the same order they told somebody else, and maybe they think of something that they should have told the 3rd person, and so they're telling you that now. And learn from them as you go forward in helping them, and also learn from yourself and past mistakes. I think anybody has the ability to be an advocate. Like I said, it's so common, it's happening out there. It's probably happening to at least one person you know, or it has happened already, and they're recovering from it. They're going from victim to survivor, and you can still offer them help. Offer them resources. Don't force them down their throat. Don't give any ultimatums. I've heard so many people that are like, you know, if you go back to her, don't come back here again. If you stay with him, don't expect me to be at the holidays. Don't expect a relationship with me if you're gonna stay with your abuser. That is so unhelpful because there's millions of reasons why people stay with their abusers. It can be fear of leaving. It's statistically more dangerous to try to leave than it is any other time in a relationship. It could be all the different threats that have been made, both for physical harm, and like in my client's example of keeping the children. And it also can be that they truly love and care about, that they're emotionally attached, that they're trauma bonded with their abuser. And any of those emotional attractions and those feelings of caring for somebody who's hurting them might outweigh their willingness to save themselves. It's several years old now, but I love the hashtag why I stayed when that was popularized a few years ago. And my favorite one of all combined it with hashtag why I left. This woman reported why she stayed was because she thought her kids needed a father. Why she left is she realized that her kids needed a mother, because she was putting herself in danger every day by trying to keep the family together. So offer resources, but don't be upset if the person doesn't jump at them. So many of my clients have scoffed at the safe house numbers because they think they have to be in safe house or that there's something wrong with them if they take over free resources. So I just try to remind them what options they have available and just be patient with them, and whether or not they take advantage of it. And I end with write as much as possible because their memories are shot. And they're not going to remember all the numbers that you tell them, and they're not going to remember appointments. And also, if you're, just talking to a friend, to a loved one who is going through this, I recommend having them write out some information because it helps them restore that memory. And then if you give them anything in paper or over text that they can save and find later, that's great, because it is a lot. And as great as it is to offer them all the resources, if they don't have any recollection of what those resources are, does it really help? Yes, question.
Miss Amber, do you have any insight into our keeping a relationship with our loved one, but we don't want to be around the abuser, or we don't want our children to be around the abuser because we don't trust that person to regulate their emotions around us or the children?
So I think that's actually two separate points or two separate questions, because I don't have any children of my own, and I can make my own decisions based on whether or not I feel safe or secure. Whereas if I'm protecting my niece or nephew, or if I had children, my decision about where my children go wouldn't necessarily match where I'm comfortable going. So I think that if you really fear that your children would learn the negative behaviors or have some adverse reaction to being around an abuser, I think you outweigh the benefits and negatives of how much of subjecting your children to the possible abuse is actually helping the victim versus saving your children that hassle. I think that you as an individual shouldn't place it solely on the victim to decide whether or not you talk to them. Like maybe it's as simple as I'll give so and so my number. If I change my number, I'll keep in contact with this loved one, but my kids aren't going to come around to anything that that your husband's at. My kids aren't gonna come around anything that your girlfriend's at. And trying to have that conversation, but I definitely think in that nuanced situation, if you don't think it's best for your kids to be there, I don't think you should put your kids in harm's way for hope of not leaving the victim alone, because your kids aren't gonna save the victim, but you still have the chance to. So maybe giving them hope and another way to contact you, and offer resources or random communication. Ask how they're doing without necessarily being like, okay, has so-and-so hit you again recently? Like, you know, kind of empathetically approach the conversation with them and keep a running conversation with them so that they know you're in your corner, that you still will support them, but again, without putting your own children in any dangerous situation or just an uncomfortable situation. But again, I'm not a parent, but that's what I'm leaning towards. Any other questions off of that or anything else? I do want to briefly point y'all's attention to the image on this screen. I don't know how many of you have heard of the cycle of domestic violence, but studies have shown that most abusive relationships have 3 stages to them, and you keep on repeating those 3 stages. So the first one is the honeymoon stage, which when you're first meeting somebody, it's all the nice stuff. It's the love bombing. It's the caring about you and building you up. Or maybe it's gift giving, maybe it's just compliments. And then there's some tension building where you're not sure, like when the other shoe will drop. You're starting to feel like this relationship isn't as good and cheery as you thought it was. And then an explosion happens, and that can be verbal, that can be physical, it can be a combination of the two. And then you cycle back into the honeymoon stage because it's apologies, or it's putting the blame on you, but trying to make the relationship better. So for example, I just love you so much. You see how crazy you make me. I had to do that. I'm just, look at you. You're so handsome. Of course I'm jealous, and I don't like any other woman talking to you. Whatever it is, there's a chance of good days, and most victims are in it for the good days, or think that they can fix their abuser or make the good days last longer. And then it gets back to the tension building again. Maybe certain questions are asked, maybe your phone's looked through, and then the explosion. So the reason I've drawn it as a spiral on this slide is because my personal belief is the cycle tightens until it chokes out the life in the person in the center. And so the explosions are more and more likely to be deadly. The tension building stages are longer, and the honeymoon stage becomes almost non-existent as you continue this relationship of abuse. So, oops, I clicked once too many. So, like I mentioned, offering resources, and I'm sorry it's cut off a little bit at the top, but literally the label, this slide is free resources. These are all free resources that are offered in this area, and I highly recommend you looking up more specific ones if you're watching from a different area. So our safe houses include Genesis House and Avalon Center, and I've got their toll-free 24/7 hotline numbers there. As I mentioned before, you can call just to talk, you can call to ask questions, you can also call to see if they have a bed available in their safe house. You can call both, you can call either. It does not matter if you are not in their immediate service area. They can talk to you and help connect you to somebody who might be better suited to help if you are calling from a far away place. If you would like to file for an order of protection, in the area, we've got the Upper Cumberland Family Justice Center. They have an office in Cookville and one in Livingston, and I've listed both of their numbers. They do practice business hours of Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. But you can contact them and see if you qualify for an order of protection, if they'll help you fill out a petition for one. And they also often refer people to legal aid to see if I can help represent them in court for those orders of protection. If you need help finding and applying for employment, there is an individualized placement and support team, and I've listed the numbers for the Cookville, McMinnville, and Columbia offices and those contacts. And then they will not only help domestic violence survivors, but those suffering from substance abuse or any mental health disorders. And again, that's for searching for employment. If you have civil legal questions beyond what I've presented to today, or if you have questions about your own case, your own order of protection or divorce, you can contact our local Cookville office. And you can also go to our website and read some self-help resources. They've got brochures as well as videos on several different civil legal needs. Now, I promised I'd get back to orders of protection. So here's my slide on the 3 types of orders of protection in Tennessee. The first one I've talked about at length is the original one, the one that I most commonly see, and that's where somebody who is suffering from domestic abuse, so they have a relationship with the abuser by blood, marriage, or dating, and that person has harmed them or threatened to harm them. You can also apply for a victim that is underage. If you are their parent or legal guardian, you can apply as next of kin for them if they're under the age of 18. And you can also apply if you or that minor child is a victim of stalking or sexual assault. And stalking is defined by our criminal statutes. It's basically 2 or more times of unwanted contact. The other person knew it was unwanted or threatening in nature. So you said, leave me alone, and they contacted you anyways, or the very contact itself is like, I'm gonna kill you, or I'm gonna do like some bad threats there. And that contact happened 2 or more times, and it put you in some fear and would put anybody in your shoes in fear. So I like to give the example of you can't get those spam callers or a debt collector for an order of protection. And then sexual assault is rape or any unwanted sexual touching. So also being placed in fear of those things. If you're trapped in a situation and there's attempted rape or sexual assault, you can ask for an order of protection against your assailant. Even if you have had a relationship with them in the past or never had a relationship with them in the past. When you apply for an order of protection, you actually file paperwork called the petition, and that goes first to a judicial commissioner. And the commissioner reads over what you've said has happened and what you're afraid will happen, and decides whether or not you need immediate help right then and there. And if the judicial commissioner decides you do need that immediate help, they can give you a temporary order of protection that will last until the court date, and the other side has a right to a hearing within 15 days. The thought is that at court, both people can talk to the judge and tell their side. So an abuser gets a chance to explain away or deny what's happened, and they have a right to that hearing within 15 days if you have a temporary order of protection, which is based on your word only. And the full order of protection can last up to 1 year long, and it can order the other person moves out. It can give you custody of the kids. It can give you custody of pets. You can separate a phone plan that you're on with your abuser, and it can also order financial support from the abuser. There are very similar orders of protection that are specifically for vulnerable or elderly adults. So these are people over the age of 18 or 18 or older that for some physical or mental disability or limitation are unable to protect themselves. You can get an order of protection for yourself if you are one of these victims, or you can apply for a victim who is either lacking capacity to ask for the help, or it would just be too dangerous for them to ask for help. Maybe it's a caretaker that lives with them and they cannot leave the house and safely ask for an order of protection. You can file on their behalf instead. And then you can qualify for an order of protection if you suffer any of the abuse previously mentioned, so domestic abuse between somebody you're related to or dated, or you can get an order of protection for somebody who stalks you or sexually assaults you, but it also includes caregivers who are neglectful or exploitative. So basically, it doesn't actually take you causing the harm directly. If you're supposed to be a caretaker and you're letting the harm come to them, you have left them vulnerable to the abuse, you can get an order of protection against that caretaker. Also, the exploitation part, that includes financial exploitation and sexual exploitation. And the thought is, maybe it's not physical assault, maybe it's not sexual assault, including unwanted touching, but if you're forced to watch porn, if you're subjected to watching other people engage in sexual acts and can't, for any limitation or disability, can't leave the room on your own, can't avoid that on your own, you can ask for an order of protection for those things. In addition to making the person leave the home, and also all orders of protection say do not contact me, do not come around me. You can also, with a vulnerable and elderly adult order of protection, get your belongings returned or get money from the caregiver that stole those things from you. And you can specifically request and have ordered that the caregiver loses their position. If they are actually through a service agency, they can it can be ordered that they're not allowed to be a caregiver for anybody else. Lifetime's orders of protection are its own special little beast, because you can apply if you are the direct victim of a felony crime and or your immediate family of a victim of crime. So these require a criminal conviction. Nothing else does. The other orders of protection don't require police involvement at all. But a lifetime order of protection can only be granted after the conviction of a felony crime in which you were listed as a victim or your family members are. For example, if a woman is murdered and the killer is convicted of a felony murder charge, then you can, as a survivor and family member, get a lifetime order of protection. It doesn't matter if they've never contacted you directly, which would be required for another type of order of protection. You can get one simply because you are a direct family member of the person they killed. And that would also order, don't contact me, don't come around me, don't be at my home or work or any place like that. The felonies that are listed are all violent person crimes. So if the felony was stealing something like grand theft, auto, or if it was destroying personal property, you can't get a lifetime order of protection for that. But if they physically harmed you or a loved one, a direct family member, or if they sexually assaulted your family member and again have that criminal conviction, you can get a lifetime order of protection. Some of my clients come to me when they've reported crimes and we can apply for the order of protection, the first one listed here, and then eventually they might qualify for a lifetime order of protection in the future. Any questions about these orders of protection? Okay, and then this is my final slide, any questions in general. So I have my information up here on the left and Miss Looper's on the right. So she is a private attorney who used to work for the All Good Police Department, and she specialized in taking the domestic assault cases as a police officer, and she also worked closely with me and my office to assist as many victims as possible through a program that allows legal aid to pay Dana less fees than she's used to getting, but her still representing people as zealously as if they were paying out of pocket. And she also is a general practitioner. So if you have questions that Legal Aid Society might not be able to answer, she might be able to advise you or represent you in those types of cases. So any questions or comments at all?
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Thank you.